Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. Open the box to become stronger. Chapter 1. It's a paradise planet. The sky was as if it had just been washed, clean as a mirror. Above the earth, there are flowers, green trees and red flowers. The trees are shaded and green, the lake is crystal clear, and the green mountains around it are surrounded by peaks. In this beautiful world, there are two thatched huts standing on the top of the mountain. What is even more surprising is that on the side of the mountain, there is a burly man with a purple potato head sitting on a stone, looking at the fading sunset in the sky. It's beautiful. Just after sighing, Thanos suddenly frowned. Just because there was an extra black-haired figure in front of him. This is a very ordinary young man, put in the crowd. Thanos will not take a second look. But at this moment, looking at this young man, Thanos was like eating a fly, and his face was full of anger. It's hard to return to the back garden. How can I meet such a blazing star like you? In a good mood, all in vain, Thanos patted his thigh and slowly stood up. And at this moment, as if sensing Thanos' movements, Liu Chen accelerated sharply, stopped in front of Thanos, and even carried a jar in his hand, excited. Walk by, don't miss it, such a good thing, don't you buy one? With a wave of his hand, Thanos had already pushed Liu Chen away and walked straight to the hut. Alas, with a sigh, Liu Chen was angry. Good to die or not, he actually crossed over. But even if he actually crossed into the Marvel world, and even came to the back garden where Thanos planned to retire after snapping his fingers and destroying half of the universe creatures. However, this is not the most infuriating. The most angry thing is that he actually ran into the main lord, and rushed back with Thanos, who was exhausted. At that time, Liu Chen was nervous, deeply afraid that this executioner would snap his fingers and take him away. You know, Thanos is not a good person. The extinction race is light at every turn, and sometimes slaughters stars, and, more importantly, for the balance of the universe, this second cargo actually found 6 rough stones of the Marvel universe, and then snapped his fingers to take away half of the life in the universe. It's a butcher. No, butchers aren't that crazy. However, at the moment when he and Thanos looked at each other, a cold and crisp system voice suddenly sounded in Liu Chen's ears. Detecting that the host cannot withstand the gaze of such an existence, directly turn on the merchant mode. Immediately afterwards, in the confused eyes of Thanos and Liu Chen, a thatched hut suddenly appeared on the top of the mountain out of thin air. At the same time, Liu Chen's body seemed to be wrapped in an invisible layer of airflow, protecting Liu Chen. According to the explanation of that voice, with this layer of airflow, Liu Chen was invincible. Of course, this invincibility is very limited. For example, distance restrictions. Therefore, Liu Chen was very decisive to stay around the thatched house. Whenever the guy Thanos came back, he went to market his goods. As for his goods, it is a jar in his hand. Thatched huts, automatically generated 16 a day, sold out, regenerated the next day. And according to the information Liu Chen got, inside these jars, there are all kinds of things, what skills, what treasures, and even things that the world can't imagine. Only, in exchange, the purchaser pays the corresponding remuneration. And this kind of remuneration is not pure money. Of course, currency is also allowed, but the demand for money is relatively large. If there is no currency, pay for items of a certain value is collateral. If not, then it can also be exchanged for body and even soul. It's very real, it's a system. Although the conditions are a little harsh, according to the means of a top 10 salesman in Liu Chen's previous life, it is not difficult to sell the can. However, it is good to die. He came to the back garden of Thanos' pension. Looking around, looking at the world that looked like a picture scroll, but there was no one, Liu Chen really wanted to cry without tears. Can't you send me to a populated place? Can't. In the extra firmness, it seemed to detect Liu Chen's bitterness, and the system also took the initiative to persuade. Thanos is a mountain of gold, not only has 6 rough stones in hand, but also. Before he finished speaking, Liu Chen interrupted in time. Don't, spare me. Saying that, Liu Chen pointed to Thanos departing back and shouted. Look at this guy's appearance of oil and salt, how do you let me sell? If you hadn't protected me, I'm afraid I would have been slapped to death by him. System. For a moment, as if a decision had been made, the system suddenly spoke. Given the current hell mode, the host has to send one out even if it is sent. Send. Blinking, Liu Chen was a little dumbfounded. However, for a moment, Liu Chen's eyes lit up sharply, and he looked at Thanos back with a touch of blaze. Sending, not simply sending. Others don't know, don't Liu Chen know yet. The contents of these jars are extremely valuable, and if you are lucky enough to smash something good, it will last a lifetime. Such a good jar, if Thanos recognizes the value, Liu Chen does not believe that Thanos is not moved. Of course, considering that there is only one chance. Liu Chen felt the need to change the sales method. Thinking of this, Liu Chen adjusted his expression, revealed a cruel color, and walked viciously towards Thanos' back. Originally, I was still in awe of you as a strong person and gave you some face. As a result, I enthusiastically sold me for days, and I really thought I was a soft persimmon. Bah, spit a little on the ground, Liu Chen patted his chest again, as if he was cheering himself up. In a moment, a voice with a bit of sharpness suddenly cut through the night sky. Thanos, do you fools know that it won't be long before you get your head cut off with an axe? Thanos, who did not respond, dressed in tattered clothes like a farmer, silently walked towards the thatched hut. You stupid, you're going to be cut off by Thor's storm tomahawk axe. Looking at the indifferent Thanos, Liu Chen was angry, and then he shouted unwillingly. You idiot, you idiot. Don't you think you've accomplished your mission? I tell you, before long, the Avengers guys will be rushing over, collecting the rough stones, and bringing back all the people you erased. Quote. The footsteps paused slightly, and Thanos' face froze. And at this moment, sensing Thanos' movement, Liu Chen was overjoyed and added oil and vinegar. I also tell you, at that time, even if the past you arrive, it will be wiped off with someone with an infinity glove and a snap of your fingers. Is it cool? Your ambition, your destiny, everything will fall short. Hee hee, villain, just you, just a stupid fork. Quote. It seems that Liu Chen's voice is a little treacherous. Boom. The earth shook suddenly, and Liu Chen suddenly felt that there was darkness in front of him. Looking up, a burly purple figure was already standing in front of him. You say what? Every word, the night sky is shaken. And Liu Chen felt even more cold, as if falling into a 10,000-year ice cellar. His hands and feet were constantly cold, until his heart seemed to lose the slightest bit of heat. Gollum. Subconsciously swallowing his saliva, Liu Chen remembered that this person in front of him was a big devil-like existence. Thinking of this, Liu Chen wiped the cold sweat that overflowed from his forehead and hurriedly said. Don't, you know you can't hurt me. Also, what I said is true. Quote. Speaking, as if remembering something, Liu Chen added. Also, are you planning to destroy the rough with rough stones recently? Listening to Liu Chen's voice, Thanos raised his eyebrows slightly. Destroying the rough stone, this is indeed his recent idea. Something like a rough stone with infinite power should not exist in the world. It's just that he has never said this idea to anyone else. Even when he raised the idea, he himself did not believe it. After all, the 6 rough stones are the most precious treasures in this world. Phew. Taking a deep breath, Thanos took a deep look at the very ordinary black-haired young man in front of him. Slowly raise your hand, however, without waiting for him to touch. Fa. Countless sparks have been sparked. It's useless, you can't hurt me. Looking at Thanos' actions, Liu Chen's face twitched and he quickly reminded. Yes, in a rare response, a red glove on Thanos' left hand turned out to be colorful. At the same time, a great force has been pouring out. For a moment, as if the space was torn, in Liu Chen's shocked gaze, a void crack was constantly emerging. What's even more frightening is that Thanos' whole person is wrapped in a towering tornado, which is intertwined with lightning. I wipe, Infinity Gauntlet. With a sudden heart, Liu Chen's back was cold. My obedience, the system you have to resist me, if you don't resist, Lao Su will take you to play together. It seemed that he heard Liu Chen's voice, and the invisible air flow around Liu Chen suddenly shook. Immediately after, with a boom, a terrifying explosion suddenly erupted. And in the midst of the big explosion, Thanos' entire figure flew out upside down. Boom, boom, boom. With a tooth-biting crash, several green mountains collapsed. Late at night, a thatched hut, covering his mouth and coughing purple potato head, really couldn't bear Liu Chen's playful gaze, and snorted coldly. If I hadn't snapped my fingers and was seriously injured, do you think my strength is this? Yes, yes, Thanos, you are the most powerful. Flattering. Liu Chen took a small stool and sat down. Can we talk properly now? Quote. Talk about what? Before the words were finished, Liu Chen had already brought a jar to Thanos. Smash it open and you'll know everything you want to know. The pupils shrank slightly, and Thanos was also shocked. Everything. Say it's not impressed, that's definitely fake. After all, after several days of getting along, he had already sensed the weirdness of the little guy in front of him. Mo said that he was seriously injured. Even if he was on the verge of death, it was easy to erase an ant. But this guy, even when he urged the Infinity Gauntlet, was unharmed. And, more importantly, it's the words this guy said. Will he be cut off by that guy from Thor? Whoever he erased will return. In the past, he would be wiped away by that metal pimple with a snap of his fingers. What kind of joke? He is the destiny of heaven, and he has truly completed the existence of the mission. How can he fall short? Of course, Thanos also clenched his fists without knowing when. He had already felt his naivety. People who existed would eventually reminisce about the past, and that kind of concern that was hard to let go would also prevent people from continuing to live. So, he shouldn't simply wipe out half of the life in the universe. Be ruthless, wipe out the entire universe, and then reshape the universe. In that way, new life will live with gratitude. It won't be like now, painful and embarrassed, and even at the cost of breaking the balance of time and space. However, Liu Chen, who was vaguely aware of Thanos' thoughts at this time, shuddered suddenly. Brother, don't think too much. With your current body, let alone erasing the universe, you can't even take away half of the remaining people. Quote. His expression froze slightly, and Thanos raised his head, which was rare, and said in astonishment. How do you know what I'm thinking? How could you not know? You in the past came to this era with this idea in mind. Complaining slightly in his heart, Liu Chen raised the jar again and reminded. Don't say that, you want to know everything, right? Quick, break the jar, quick. HMPH, snorted coldly. Thanos grabbed the jar with one hand and squeezed it. Crack, accompanied by a crisp sound, a dazzling golden light flashed in the broken jar, and at the same time, three very strange things suddenly appeared in the air. Wood style. Wood clone technique. Chakra crystal stone. Small prophecy. Looking at the three objects floating in the air, Thanos was stunned. Although he was prepared that there was something in the jar, looking at these three objects emitting golden light, his face was a little strange. How could these two scroll-like objects be stuffed into that palm-sized jar? Suspicious, Thanos calmly grabbed a scroll. Just this thing can let me know everything. With a look of disdain on his face, Thanos tightened the scroll in his hand. It was very soft, and there was an illusion of being wrapped in gentle sunlight. Even in the dimness, Thanos felt the slight vibration of the time stone. Not to mention the material of this scroll, the slight vibration of the time stone alone was enough to shock his heart. At this time, Liu Chen, who had been paying attention to Thanos' movements, also breathed a sigh of relief. As a canned food merchant, he didn't know what was in the can. However, he repeatedly told the system to ensure that Thanos knew something. Otherwise, if Thanos, this fool, broke the jar and broke it, Liu Chen would be in trouble. You know, he is the only customer on the entire planet. If he doesn't buy anything, Liu Chen can only live alone. But looking at the three things floating in the void, Liu Chen also sighed at Thanos' luck. Of course, because the owner of the store needed to introduce them, the moment Thanos opened the jar, these three things were already known to Liu Chen. Wood style. Wood clone technique. A powerful ninjutsu from the first Hokage of the Naruto world, Hashirama Senju, that can create several wood clones that are identical to the original, not only in appearance but also in aura. What's even more amazing is that it can be maintained without being seriously injured. Chakra crystal stone. Because of the difference in the power of the world, ninjutsu requires chakra, so this chakra crystal stone came into being. It can input different powers and then convert them into chakra for the use of ninjutsu. Generally speaking, ninjutsu must be accompanied by a chakra crystal stone. Moreover, this crystal stone can be charged multiple times, but it is slow to charge. Multiple chakra crystal stones can also be fused. Small prophecy, a powerful magic from the magic world, the Church of Light, which can peek into some fragments of the future, because the corresponding magic power is sealed in the scroll, and no crystal stone is needed. How to say these things? For someone like Thanos, it is not very effective in enhancing his strength, but it is practical and just meets his current needs. Moreover, this kind of thing has never appeared in this world, and its value is still quite high. Okay, now you should tell me how I know everything. Thanos looked calm while playing with the scroll in his hand. However, this is the most commendable thing about Thanos. He took away half of the creatures in the universe and then sat down to watch the sunset. He was taken away by a snap of fingers, and then he found a stone and slowly sat down until he turned into dust. With such calmness, it is no wonder that Thanos can get to where he is now. With a grin, Liu Chen pointed to the scroll in Thanos' hand. This is a prophecy from a magical world, it can let you know something. Really, after a long time, looking at Liu Chen, who had his arms crossed over his chest and looked like a boss waiting for you to ask, Thanos' mouth twitched. After a moment, he hesitated and said, "How to use, tear, tear it up directly." Looking at Liu Chen gesturing with his hands not far away, Thanos felt that his brain was not enough. Tear it up. Shaking his head, Thanos tore it up fiercely. Sizzle is a crisp sound like the tearing of brocade, accompanied by the whole body of Thanos being shocked. Boom. It was like a thunderbolt in his mind, and countless scenes flashed before his eyes. He was wearing the tattered clothes of a farmer, living a life of working from sunrise to sunset on this garden-like planet. He returned to his hut and was suddenly attacked by several people. In the end, he was beheaded by Thor with an axe. And at this moment, the scene stopped abruptly, but in the distance, Thanos' body was trembling. Just as this guy said, he was really beheaded. However, this is not the point. The point is that if this is true, then later, the people he took away with a snap of his fingers will be brought back by the Avengers. No. Veins popped out of his forehead, and a terrifying aura suddenly erupted. Thanos was an Eternal on Titan, and knew all the superhuman philosophies of the Eternals, which gave him unsurpassed strength, endurance, recovery ability, and agility. As a result, his sudden outburst instantly caused the entire thatched hut to explode. And at this moment, a voice with little interest suddenly sounded in Thanos' ears. Enough, I thought you would do something, but you could only scream. You guy. He stood up slowly, and suddenly pressed towards Liu Chen with the momentum of a god or demon. However, seeing Liu Chen's calm and nonchalant look without even lifting the corner of his clothes, Thanos seemed to remember something and frowned. Then, he sat down on the ground. I lost my temper. Well, seeing Thanos suddenly retreat, Liu Chen was also stunned. He didn't expect that Thanos would be so decisive. When he knew that he couldn't hurt him, he gave up decisively. However, Liu Chen didn't pursue these. He pointed to his thatched house not far away and said, "Next time, if you have the ability, shake my house down." Quote. In the rare silence, Thanos kept silent. This young man was abnormal, but his thatched house was even more abnormal. Not only was it indestructible, but once in a while, Thanos discovered that there was something else inside. Except that there was no one living there, it was like a luxurious manor, with everything from fine wine to food. By the way, aren't you curious about what the other ones are? Based on the principle that customers are God, Liu Chen picked up another scroll and introduced, "This is a ninjutsu. If you tear it open, you will learn a magical ability." Magical ability. As if to divert his impatience, Thanos followed Liu Chen's words and asked. However, there was no way. Now he was seriously injured. Although he had 6 stones, he could not do anything. As for destroying the universe like Liu Chen did before, it was just talk. Not to mention whether it could be destroyed with the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, even if it was destroyed, he would be backfired and die. At that time, what would he use to create living beings? And at that time, without his guidance, what would be the difference between the new creatures and now? Thinking of this, Thanos also felt a headache. This is what it means to be in a dilemma. At this time, Liu Chen's introduction could actually ease his worries. This ability is magical, of course. It can make you split into several identical clones. Isn't that the same as the power of the Reality Stone? Listening to Liu Chen's introduction, Thanos said with a strange look on his face. Of course it's different, you're stupid, this is a physical object. As if remembering something, Liu Chen suggested. You also know that you will be beheaded by that Thor guy with an axe, right? I'll break his neck sooner or later. Don't interrupt me. Liu Chen snorted with a curl of his lips. Then, he gestured again and said. Think about it, if you create a clone and let Thor cut off your clone's neck, and then use the power of the original stone to affect their senses for a moment, wouldn't it give them the illusion of death? Hearing this, Thanos was also slightly stunned. Fake death, why would I fake death? And with the power of the original stone, is it difficult for me to create an illusory fake death? With a slight twitch of his face, Liu Chen knew that Thanos was not so easy to fool. However, this is still naive. After a change of mind, Liu Chen smiled jokingly and said. Faking death is fun. Imagine that the Avengers thought you were dead, and were busy tinkering with time travel, and you showed up at the critical moment. That scene is so beautiful. As for the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, hee. Liu Chen smiled and looked at the burnt black on Thanos' right hand strangely, and said jokingly. Not to mention whether you can keep activating unlimited means, can you hide it from that woman named Captain Marvel? Thanos' face suddenly changed, and he remembered the woman in golden light. Although the picture was broken, the strength of that woman was indeed terrifying. At this time, Liu Chen did not give him more time to think. He picked up the chakra crystal not far away and introduced, this magical ability comes from other worlds. If you want to use it, you must convert the energy of this crystal stone. Soon, he rushed into the thatched cottage. As soon as the door closed, Liu Chen had already pulled out the panel in his mind. Life, Liu Chen. Race, human. Occupation, devil merchant. Lost everything, just a small path, only souls are what the devil merchant hunts. Points 13, 10 points for selling a can, 1 point for a successful introduction. Attributes, Strength 8, Agility 10, Spirit 12, Constitution 8. Talent, Silver Tongue. As a businessman, Silver Tongue is your nature. Ability, Shop Thatched House. With the thatched house as the center, within a radius of 2 kilometers, the host's defense is invincible. Looking at his poor face, Liu Chen licked his lips. It's good to have a start. Thinking of this, Liu Chen's eyes have been drawn to the points. Points are the only thing he needs as a businessman. These points can not only strengthen his various attributes, but also buy things in the mall. As for attributes, the average value of the 4 attributes of ordinary people is 10. For Liu Chen, it is really average. However, he can use points to add points. Add 1 and he will be strengthened. In this way, Liu Chen has found the most intuitive way to become stronger. Of course, in this world, the intuitive performance of attributes may not be great. Thinking of Thanos one by one, the corners of Liu Chen's mouth twitched. If he added, who knows when he would be able to add it. Forget it, I won't compete with this kind of strong man. He is just a businessman, just do his duty as a businessman. Thinking of this, Liu Chen has already added 1 point in his spirit. Boom, it was like a stream of fresh water flowing into his mind. Liu Chen felt his spirit was shaken, and the depression he had felt for the past few days disappeared. It feels good. While sighing, Liu Chen added a little. This is awesome. Unable to restrain himself, Liu Chen's eyes widened, and his mental state was shocked. He even felt as if his brain was evolving. So awesome. Liu Chen was determined and added 6 points in one go, directly raising his spirit to 20. After a moment, with a boom, it was as if his mind exploded. Liu Chen felt countless coolness flowing through the depths of his mind. Moreover, because this was not a long-term change, but a momentary change, Liu Chen's feeling was even more obvious and abrupt. It was as if the whole world was brighter. To put it most intuitively, the brain was developed, and the vision and hearing were also enhanced. The dust in the air, even dozens of meters away, the words on the wine bottle on the counter were extremely clear. Although a businessman's duty is to buy and sell, I feel it is also necessary. Nodding, Liu Chen has already made clear the future path. Just kidding, such a pleasant way to become stronger, those who don't pursue it are idiots. Thinking of this, Liu Chen spent another 3 points on strength, constitution, and agility. And, according to the speed of Lu Chen's brain operation now, a few breaths have understood the role of these attributes. Strength is nothing more than strengthening muscles to make the body more explosive. And constitution is to strengthen the body's bone density and strengthen the skin. In other words, it is a bit like strengthening defense. It should also strengthen endurance and organs such as the heart. As for agility, it is more like coordinating the body to make Lu Chen's body more adaptable to changes. However, due to the fact that these attributes are strengthened too little, Lu Chen did not catch more of the feeling. Just looking at the remaining 2 points, Lu Chen gave up continuing to strengthen. Anyway, no matter how to strengthen, these 4 attributes are all strengthened. There is no such thing as partiality. Although it is said that this kind of strengthening is very slow, Lu Chen deeply understands the way of balance. A large-scale strengthening of any attribute will cause the body to collapse, even the spirit. Lu Chen does not want to become a creature like a ghost. Gradually adapting to the changes in his body, Lu Chen also walked to the counter not far away. The interior of his thatched house was a different world. It was even more like a luxury house in his previous life. The first floor was a bar, but in the middle of the bar counter, there were cans. And now, there are 15. Next, it's time to get something from Thanos. Glancing at the jar, Lu Chen thought to himself. As a businessman, there is only one chance to make a good start, and the profit is the biggest part. Thanos is even richer, enough for Lu Chen to absorb blood for a while. The most important thing is the Infinity Gauntlet. Thinking of this, Lu Chen, who was hidden in the dark, also raised his mouth slightly and smiled coldly. The next day, after having a meal in the thatched cottage, Lu Chen opened the door again. At this time, Lu Chen noticed that on a hillside not far away, there were several figures staring at the sunrise. The iconic purple potato head, the burly back, and the imposing momentum, Lu Chen was a little distracted. After a long time, he rubbed his eyes and made sure that he was not mistaken, then he exclaimed, "Wood clone." With a tisk, several figures with their backs to Lu Chen turned around at the same time, and several pairs of eyes were staring at Lu Chen calmly. Well, some were speechless. Being stared at by one purple potato head was already a headache. How would it feel to be stared at by several purple potato heads? Although he knew that there was only one real body among these few, Lu Chen's heart still tightened. However, at this moment, a gentle voice suddenly came from the figure in the middle. "This wooden clone is very interesting." With a smile, Thanos propped himself up and waved again. Then, in Lu Chen's stunned eyes, the other purple potato heads seemed to have received some information. They took out hoes and straw hats from somewhere and walked towards the fields not far away. It looked like they were going to farm. What are you doing?" Lu Chen said in surprise, his eyes widened. "Work at sunrise and rest at sunset." As if he enjoyed seeing Lu Chen's surprised look, Thanos' mouth curled up slightly. Well, after hesitating for a while, Lu Chen asked, "Aren't you afraid that the Avengers will come and find you?" As he spoke, Lu Chen gestured with his hand to his neck, and the meaning was self-evident. "Ha ha." With a cold smile, Thanos raised his left hand in a signal. What caught Lu Chen's eyes was a crimson glove inlaid with 6 gems. The Infinity Gauntlet is the most terrifying treasure in the Marvel Universe. Because of it, Thanos' combat power directly jumped from the Godfather level to the multiverse level. It is worth mentioning here that the Marvel ability levels, from small to large, are divided into Earth level, Godfather level, Single Universe level, Multiverse level, Super Universe level and All-Powerful Universe level. The Earth level refers to Marvel's regular superheroes, such as Iron Man, the Hulk and Captain America, who exist in all parallel universes. But some characters have been greatly strengthened in parallel universes, and some can even reach the level of the multiverse. Going up is the Godfather level. As the name suggests, the Godfather level is the Godfather of the Earthlings, and the characters in mythology are like the Godfather level. For example, Thor, Odin, and the Ancient One. The normal Thanos also belongs to the Godfather level. He is a descendant of the god of time on Titan, a member of the Eternal Clan, and the most outstanding existence. The next 4 levels are called Universe level. Any superhero who has reached this level, superheroes at the multiverse level, are all capable of destroying planets. Single Universe level. This level is like a servant at the multiverse level, but it can beat heroes at the father level and completely defeat the observer. For example, the Celestials, not the fake Celestials created by Eternity, Silver Surfer, and Omega level mutants. Superheroes who reach the multiverse level can destroy a single universe. For example, the 5 great gods, the Phoenix Force, and the Infinity Gauntlet Thanos. As for the super large universe level and the omnipotent universe level, let's not talk about it, because that is not something Liu Chen can explore. Now, he has not even reached the Earth level. And Thanos, because of the Infinity Gauntlet, can directly reach the multiverse level. You can imagine how terrifying this guy is. Of course, it must be said that Thanos' state is very unstable. To put it simply, he can only burst out the power of the multiverse level for a while. Just like now, if the Avengers really come to the door, even if Thanos snaps his fingers, he will be skinned alive. Liu Chen curled his lips and selectively ignored his boasting. Then, he took out a bottle of champagne from his waist bag and threw it to Thanos, saying casually, "Do you want to smash another jar?" "No." In the cold voice, Liu Chen suddenly spit out the drink he had just taken. "What?" Liu Chen screamed in disbelief, staring at Thanos, who was drinking champagne in the distance. At this time, Thanos, who noticed Liu Chen's surprise, also smiled leisurely. "I know you have a lot of good things, but I don't have money." "Ah, equivalent exchange is also okay." With a laugh, Thanos looked at Liu Chen deeply and said bluntly, "This is what you are thinking about, right?" Thanos took another sip of his drink and then sighed. "I don't know what to ask for now." Raising his eyebrows slightly, Liu Chen looked at the somewhat distraught Thanos and was a little confused. But after thinking about it, he understood. He thought his mission was accomplished, but he was overturned. Even if he wanted to destroy the entire universe and reshape civilization, he is now powerless. Thanos now is like an old man in his twilight years, and an old man who has lost his relatives. He doesn't know where to go. Now, all he can do is probably wait for the Avengers to come to him, and then fight to the death and completely destroy their plan. Of course, this is just Liu Chen's guess. But after thinking about this guess and looking at Thanos' expression, Liu Chen was slightly certain. Thinking of this, the brain that had just been strengthened started working rapidly. After just a few breaths, the corners of Liu Chen's mouth rose a little. In another world, there is a person who has the same dream as you, but his method is different from yours. He has an illusion that covers the whole world. As Liu Chen narrated, Thanos, who was walking from afar, was slightly startled. Another world, illusion. While muttering, Thanos looked up at Liu Chen and sighed, "Are you really an alien?" No, I am a businessman who walks outside of space and time." After a polite response, Liu Chen returned to the previous topic and said, "If you break the jar and get the illusion by chance, you can use the power of the infinite gauntlet to release it to all the creatures in the universe and then make them forget the dead. In this way, they will naturally not reminisce." Before he could finish his words, there was a bang, the bottle exploded, and Thanos, who was walking towards him, suddenly stopped. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Thanos suddenly laughed, and his whole figure straightened up several points. "Bring me the jar, I want to break this illusion." As he said this, Thanos' eyes condensed, and a faint divine light emanated from his eyes. "You didn't lie to me, did you?" "Of course not." Spreading his hands, Liu Chen said sincerely. Then, as if he remembered something, he said casually, "There may be some resurrection technique in the jar. If you want to revive your daughter, you can." Crack was like a thunder, passing through the brain, and Thanos was shocked. Resurrection, resurrection, resurrection. His mind was full of words, constantly filling his sensitive nerves. Not long ago, in order to obtain the soul gem, he sacrificed his beloved daughter. And this is also the eternal pain in his heart. It cannot be healed, nor can it be compensated. But at this moment, listening to Liu Chen's words, he lost his composure. His whole body was shaking. "Give it to me, I want to smash it, I want to smash it hard." With rare excitement, Thanos slowly approached Liu Chen. Gurgle. He swallowed his saliva, looking at Thanos in front of him with amazing momentum and tears in his eyes. Liu Chen knew that he had let the cat out of the bag. Originally, he wanted to use this as a trump card. With a slight sigh, Liu Chen also put on a friendly smile, "I'll go get you the jar now." Not long after, Lu Chen returned from the thatched cottage with 4 jars. The system was very strange, and it actually stipulated that a person could only smash 4 times a day. What was even more outrageous was that the price was higher each time. In other words, the first jar cost 10 yuan, the second jar cost 100 yuan, and so on, until the person could not afford it even if he spent all his money. Moreover, the most important thing was that this price would only return to its original price after 1 year. Shaking his head, Lu Chen felt a little annoyed. What's the point of doing this? Lu Chen sighed in his heart and didn't understand. However, at this moment, there was a crisp sound of ding, and a cold voice sounded in his ears. Ding, doesn't the host want to harvest other people's souls? You know, when he smashes the jar but can't pay the reward, the guest's body and even soul will be harvested by the host. Lu Chen paused, his eyes trembled slightly. What's the meaning? Ding, according to the store's absolute contract, when any customer is unable to pay, the system will enforce the contract and harvest their souls. Hearing this, Lu Chen suppressed his excitement and asked, is this why the store can smash the jar first? Ding, yes. Gulu swallowed his saliva, and Lu Chen was also shocked. No wonder this thing is called the devil merchant. It's all about tricks. Fortunately, I am the owner of the store, otherwise I would be played to death without knowing why. However, Lu Chen also has some understanding. This should be taking advantage of people's greed. If you want to get it, you must pay. There is no such thing as a free lunch. If you can't suppress the greed in your heart, you will definitely be swallowed up by the devil. Thinking of this, the corners of Lu Chen's mouth also rose a few points strangely. Compared to being swallowed by the devil, Lu Chen would rather be the real devil. No, the devil merchant. Thinking of this, Lu Chen's footsteps became lighter. In just a few breaths, he had arrived in front of Thanos. However, a moment later, before Lu Chen could get excited for too long, a voice sounded in his ears. How much is a jar? Looking at Thanos, who looked like he was about to pay, Lu Chen was stunned. Well, you can smash it first and pay later. No, I'm used to paying first, and... At this point, Thanos looked at Lu Chen teasingly and whispered. You look complicated, which makes it hard for me to trust you. To be on the safe side, I'll pay first. After all, I don't want to use my Infinity Gauntlet to pay off my debts. Thus, Thanos proudly raised the glove on his right hand. In addition to the first one being free, the second jar is worth 100,000 yuan. You only need to take out an item worth 100,000 yuan to exchange it. Raising his finger, Lu Chen gave the price of the jar. 100,000. Thanos frowned as he pondered. Although he had some knowledge of currency, he was not sure which planet's currency Lu Chen was referring to. Thinking of this, Thanos snapped his fingers. Da! With a crisp sound, the space gradually distorted. In a moment, a huge throne full of science fiction style was suspended in the air not far away. Floating throne, Thanos' exclusive throne, equipped with offensive weapons and capable of traveling across the galaxy. To some extent, this is a battleship that embodies the scientific achievements of the entire Eternal Clan. This throne can be exchanged for several jars. Well. In the rare silence, Lu Chen's face twitched. Didn't they say that Thanos went back to the back garden to retire without taking anything with him? He didn't even make any arrangements on this planet. At this time, as if he had noticed Lu Chen's thoughts, Thanos touched the back of his head and smiled nostalgically. This throne has been with me for many years. Although I can cross galaxies with the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, it is too laborious. It is better to cross the void with this throne. So, are you still planning to sell it? Lu Chen said in a daze, his eyes widened. You know, the value of a throne like Thanos is inestimable. Not only can this throne span galaxies, but it also embodies Thanos' countless scientific knowledge. In the simplest terms, this throne can be exchanged for a few resource-rich planets. Hearing Lu Chen's surprise, Thanos slowly raised his head, looked at the rising sun in the sky, and said with deep emotion. If that's possible, I think I won't need these anymore. Thanos looked at Lu Chen again and said seriously. I hope what you said before is true. If you can really revive my daughter, let alone this floating throne, even. Before he finished speaking, the old man, who seemed to be in his twilight years, slowly raised his arm, revealing a crimson glove that shone with 7 colors. Gulu, he swallowed subconsciously, and Lu Chen was also shocked. You guy, as you said before, I don't want the original stone to exist in this world, and if you take it away, I believe it will not appear in the hands of others. Of course, once it's in my hands, I will never spit it out. Like a vow, or a promise, Lu Chen's eyes were full of heat. The Infinity Gauntlet was his biggest goal. Now, this former king has made such a promise, how could he retreat? And, as he said, once it's in his hands, I will never spit it out. This is not a joke. Not only Lu Chen firmly believes in this, but Thanos also firmly believes in this. Because no one can recognize the mysterious power shrouded in this seemingly ordinary young man better than him. Invulnerable to all methods, that's what it means. And, more importantly, Thanos saw. Seeing this young man walking out of the thatched hut, he actually became a little stronger. Although this kind of strength is insignificant to him, it is enough. Such a person who is destined to grow into a giant is enough to protect the Infinity Gauntlet. Not long after, according to the system's valuation, Lu Chen gave Thanos an accurate answer. 9 jars, but I'll give them to you over 3 days. Only 9. Thanos narrowed his eyes and looked at Lu Chen suspiciously. Although he didn't know how much the 100,000 Lu Chen mentioned was worth, his floating throne, which was a priceless treasure, was only worth 9 jars. Obviously, this number did not satisfy him. In this regard, Lu Chen sighed helplessly. I'm telling you the truth. You can see that the things in any of my jars are priceless. However, I'm a businessman who deals with countless lives. I can't just provide jars for one person. So anyone who wants to buy a jar from me will pay 10 times more each time. At this point, Lu Chen's expression became serious and he said in a deep voice. I did this to avoid unilateral monopoly, but the good news is that after a year, the price will return to its original state. Very good strategy. Nodding, Thanos did not care too much. As Lu Chen said, any jar is priceless. And this can be seen from the things in the first jar. Especially the ninjutsu called Wooden Clone. This alone makes him increase his combat power. It is conceivable what this means. After sorting out his thoughts, Thanos did not drag his feet and grabbed a jar on the ground with one hand. World-class loudspeaker. Spider-Man's perfect serum. Unknown summoning card. Looking at the 3 objects suspended in the air, Lu Chen also obtained their information through the system at the first time. World-shaped loudspeaker, a prop commonly seen in games. With it, you can instantly transmit your voice to the whole world, echoing in the ears of countless people. Spider-Man's perfect serum, a magical serum. With it, you will have the power of a spider and become the next Spider-Man. Even surpassing Spider-Man is just around the corner. Unknown summoning card. Even God doesn't know what kind of mysterious card it summons, but please believe that it will definitely bring you surprises. Staring blankly, Lu Chen was rarely absent-minded. After a moment, he glanced strangely at the purple potato head not far away, and thought to himself. How can this guy be so lucky? You know, there are many good things in the jar, but it is rare to find such good things as Thanos. Of course, the reason why Lu Chen knew this was because the system had hinted it. In this way, it can only be said that Thanos is really lucky. But if he had bad luck, how could he collect 6 raw stones? Thinking of this, Lu Chen habitually picked up the large loudspeaker and introduced. This is a very interesting tool that can make your voice reach any corner of the world. Really, taking a cold look at the loudspeaker in Lu Chen's hand, Thanos was obviously not interested. Is there any prop here to revive my daughter? Well, his face froze slightly, and Lu Chen shook his head and said bluntly, no. Okay, Thanos nodded, as if he had been prepared. Then, in front of Lu Chen's stunned eyes, he picked up the large speaker that Lu Chen had thrown aside and said, this thing can make my voice heard in every corner of the world. Yes, and if you have someone you want to convey your thoughts to, your words will be clearer in his mind, just like whispering in his ear. According to some secret information from the system, Lu Chen also added. It's quite interesting. After playing with it for a while, Thanos was also a little curious. Can such a small thing make my voice reach every corner of the world? Suspicious, Thanos also put the big speaker to his mouth. That's right, there is only one chance. After hearing Liu Chen's timely reminder, Thanos suddenly grinned and sneered, "That's enough." Then, according to Liu Chen's guidance, Thanos brewed for a while, and then a cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes, and he said in a very cold voice to the speaker, "Avengers, humph, a group of ridiculous reptiles, you can suppress them with a flip of your hand, and you can't reverse your fate." After saying this, Thanos turned around and glanced at Liu Chen, whose face was twitching behind him, and laughed rarely. "How is it?" "Very strong." Liu Chen gave a thumbs up and was convinced. "Is this considered a declaration of war?" However, the group of Avengers should be like frightened grasshoppers, suspicious at this moment. Thinking of this, Liu Chen also saw that the big trumpet in Thanos' hand suddenly turned into a golden light and went straight to the sky. After a moment, with a bang, the golden light exploded and turned into a golden air wave, which continued to spread until it stretched to the endless distance. At the same time, a voice so cold that it made people lose their body heat suddenly sounded in the depths of Liu Chen's mind. "The Avengers, a bunch of ridiculous reptiles, they can be suppressed with a flip of the hand, and they also want to reverse their fate." His face twitched slightly, and Liu Chen even saw an illusory and burly voice sitting high on the throne, looking down at all living beings coldly. The store's products are really top-notch, and there are even lifelike projections. At this time, Thanos also obviously noticed this, and his face looked a little better. Just at this moment, just as Liu Chen expected, the entire Avengers base fell into a deathly silence. "The Avengers, a bunch of ridiculous reptiles, they can be suppressed with a flip of the hand, and they can't even think of reversing their fate." The cold voice sounded in their minds, and vaguely, these Avengers saw a familiar and terrifying figure. Thanos. How is it possible? In shock and anger, everyone who was rarely meeting at the Avengers headquarters stood up one after another. "Is that fool here? I want to kill him, he took everything from me." In a rare moment of loss of composure, the Black Widow, who now controls the entire Avengers, had a livid face. It was so hard to get it, but it was taken away by Thanos with a snap of his fingers. Black Widow had been patient for a long time. But before she could continue to rage, a big hand was already on her shoulder. "Don't be impulsive, Natasha, that must have been an auditory hallucination." Although he said so, Captain America, Steve also looked solemn. What the hell is an auditory hallucination? Can it be so realistic, even as if it is whispering in your ear? However, looking at the detector without any movement, he found it difficult to convince himself that Thanos would come at this time. "You know, that guy disappeared directly after a snap of his fingers." In the rare suspicion, the entire Avengers headquarters seemed to be shrouded in a haze. At the same time, in a mansion, Tony sat quietly on the sofa, expressionless. This was the 180th day of his total defeat. Silence, silence again. In silence, Tony, as Iron Man, has been blaming himself for 180 days. Occasionally looking up and looking at the photo of Spider-Man on the counter, Tony's smile became even more bitter. And at this moment, the Avengers, a bunch of ridiculous reptiles, they can be suppressed with a flip of the hand, but they can't even think of reversing their fate. The cold and familiar voice whispered in his ear, and Tony's face changed drastically. Nie, tyrant, seemed to be gritting his teeth. This usually steady man lost his composure because of this voice. "Butler, please investigate where this sound comes from and try to find his location." "Yes." In the cold mechanical voice, after hundreds of days of silence, the artificial intelligence has started to work again. While the Avengers and even most of the universe were trembling faintly because of Thanos' voice, this burly man with purple skin was playing with a syringe in his hand with a strange look on his face. "If you inject this, you can have the power of that little spider. To be precise, it should be beyond him. This serum is a perfect serum." With a smile, Liu Chen also looked at the syringe in Thanos' hand curiously. "I don't know if it's because of the perfect serum, the liquid in the syringe is very crystal clear." From his current angle, looking up, he can even see that under the bright sunlight, the liquid in the syringe is faintly emitting colorful glass. Obviously, this is a serum with extremely high purity. At this time, listening to Liu Chen's explanation, Thanos narrowed his eyes slightly. Thanos is not unfamiliar with the little spider. When snatching the raw stone, it was also an eyesore, and he was entangled with very tough white spider silk several times. However, that's all. In terms of strength, he is not up to par. Thinking of this, Thanos has already thrown the syringe in his hand. Boring stuff. Liu Chen raised his eyebrows, but he quickly took the syringe. Bored, with a hint of surprise, Liu Chen also looked at Thanos in amazement. I don't think the power of those losers can concern me. Like a king, Thanos put one hand on his knee, leaned his back against the hillside and looked at the bright sun, sighing. Shaking his head, Liu Chen was speechless. In terms of strength, Spider-Man and Thanos are indeed one on the ground and one in the sky. Moreover, Thanos is an eternal being, born to stand at the top of the universe. Things like spider serum are really dispensable to him. Thinking of this, Liu Chen looked at the syringe in his hand again, and a touch of heat flashed inadvertently in the depths of his eyes. Thanos can't use it, but for him who is only a few points stronger than ordinary people, this serum is undoubtedly a treasure. What's more, this is a perfect serum. Compared with the power Spider-Man obtained by chance and accident, it is at least more than one level better. System, can I use the guest stuff? Ding, this system has no right to interfere. Hearing this response, Liu Chen's mouth corners slightly raised. Originally, he was worried that his strength would rise too slowly, but he didn't expect that there would be such a benefit. You know, Spider-Man's strength is insignificant to Thanos. But his own strength still has its highlights. As Liu Chen knows, spider sense, like a spider, it obtains information through air vibrations and senses everything around it. A very practical ability, equivalent to having one more way to obtain information, even in the dark, it is like an open fire. There is also a more practical ability, spider power. The spider's proportionally amplified strength can easily lift heavy objects such as cars, reinforced concrete, and the strength can reach 15 to 20 tons. Of course, the spider power brought by this perfect serum may be more than that. However, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that Spider-Man's power, the amount will not affect Liu Chen's appearance, and it can improve Liu Chen's strength to a certain extent. For Liu Chen, this should be a very good transition. You have to eat one bite at a time and walk one step at a time. Liu Chen believes that the system can make his strength turn upside down in an instant. But that's not what Liu Chen wants. The strength obtained in this way is like a rootless duckweed. When encountering a strong man of the same level, he will be easily crushed. Therefore, such a power that can make an ordinary person like Parker become a Superman is even more tempting to Liu Chen. Parker is an ordinary person, and so is he. In this way, although the strength has skyrocketed, he can gradually adapt to it and lay the foundation for the future. Thinking of this, Liu Chen also made a decision in his heart. But at this moment, as if he had noticed something, Liu Chen suddenly looked up, but saw Thanos looking at him with a playful expression. Well, Liu Chen squeaked, as if someone had discovered something shameful. His face turned slightly red, but before he could say anything, Thanos raised his hand. Chapter 11. Would you like to try? Liu Chen murmured, his eyes flickering slightly. Then, he raised his mouth slightly and inserted the needle into his arm. Zizi. As the serum poured in, Liu Chen suddenly trembled. Bang, bang, bang. The heartbeat was like thunder, reverberating in the body. At this moment, if someone could see through the body and see into Liu Chen's body, they would be shocked to find that Liu Chen's heart had been wrapped in a layer of crystal clear, faintly colorful liquid. More importantly, as the liquid continued to seep in, Liu Chen's heart seemed to be strengthening at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bang, 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 bang. Amidst the increasingly rapid and short-beating sounds, colorful blood was already gushing out of Liu Chen's heart. The blood continued to flow along the blood vessels, and in just a few breaths, it had flowed to every corner of Liu Chen's body. At this moment, Liu Chen's body also suddenly shook. It hurts so much. Pressing his chest tightly, feeling the powerful heartbeat that seemed to be about to explode, Liu Chen's face turned pale. However, this was just the beginning. The severe pain continued to attack him, as if it was going to tear Liu Chen's body apart, and Liu Chen's teeth seemed to be broken. However, at this time, Liu Chen also felt the changes in the deepest part of his body. Strengthening, endless strengthening. Liu Chen with his eyes closed only felt that all the tissues in his body were being pulled by invisible powerful little hands, as if they were going to pull him into the furnace to be reshaped. And at this moment, Liu Chen with his eyes closed actually saw. He saw a silver, very beautiful spider. Yes, a very beautiful spider. For some reason, Lu Chen felt that it was very beautiful. The recognition of species seemed to have lost its color on him. If that spider was compared to a human, it would definitely be the most perfect existence. No, to be more precise, the interweaving of the silver patterns of this spider had transcended the recognition of race and was transmitted to Lu Chen's heart. From now on, we are one. Like a whisper from the unknown, Lu Chen felt joy and happiness. At this moment, with a bang, his heart suddenly shook, as if it had exploded. Countless energies suddenly rushed to his limbs and bones. At this time, Lu Chen already felt that all the muscles, cells, meridians, bones and other parts of his body were greedily absorbing this sweet rain like dry earth. As time passed, Lu Chen's body was getting stronger at a terrifying speed. And when Lu Chen didn't notice it, his 4 major attributes, spirit, strength, agility, and physique, had exceeded 50 at some point, and the growth rate had not stopped, and was approaching the 100 mark. Among them, spirit, which was a little higher than other attributes, had reached 70. I don't know how long it took, but suddenly, Lu Chen he felt his whole body tremble, and a mysterious and huge force filled his body. His blood was like a rushing river, rolling wantonly, and his bones were creaking like beans. Lu Chen's body straightened up several points. He slowly opened his eyes, and a ray of brilliance flashed by. At the same time, a pungent smell came from his body. Lu Chen lowered his head slightly and saw that his skin was covered with gray and white substances, which were emitting bursts of foul smell. This should be the perfect serum, which can cleanse the marrow and remove hair while strengthening the body, expel waste gas and impurities in the body, and repair the hidden injuries of the body. Thinking of this, Lu Chen also exhaled deeply. But before he could speak, Thanos' very gentle voice sounded in his ears. Go take a shower, it stinks. Well, his face froze slightly, and Lu Chen nodded honestly. Right now, right now. There was a rare hint of joy in the awkward voice. With one step, Lu Chen went straight to the hut. There was a circulating swimming pool in the mansion with a unique atmosphere, which just met his current needs. However, when Lu Chen's toes touched the ground, his face suddenly changed. Before he even exerted much strength, his body had already shot out like an arrow, crossing a distance of dozens of meters. At this moment, his body lost its balance in the air due to the sudden extreme speed. It's going to hit you. Looking at the boulder approaching, Lu Chen swallowed subconsciously. However, a moment later, just as Lu Chen subconsciously wanted to protect his head with both hands, he was shocked to find something else. It seemed that he had an extra eye. In the dim light, like the god's perspective in a game, he captured everything around him. The flow of air, the sound of wind, the sound of water, everything. In the midst of so much information, Lu Chen did not feel his brain explode. Instead, he found that his brain was like a precision instrument, organizing all the information in an orderly manner. And most importantly, at this moment, his brain suddenly gave him a signal. He could dodge, and dodge very elegantly. For some reason, Lu Chen did it. As if by instinct, his body suddenly flipped in the air, pulling 720 degrees in an instant, and at the same time, his feet had already touched the boulder. With a bang, he looked up and saw that Lu Chen's feet were attached to the boulder like suction cups, and his whole body was parallel to the ground, standing vertically on the rock. Is this the ability to absorb? Staring blankly at his feet that were attached to the boulder like suction cups, Lu Chen's heart was moved. The ability to absorb is one of Spider-Man's signature abilities. With this ability, he can use the principle of static electricity to absorb his hands and feet to any solid surface. This ability is really a magical skill in the streets and crowded cities. It's not just like walking on flat ground. And at this moment, as if he thought of something, Lu Chen suddenly raised his hand. Shua, accompanied by a sound of breaking through the air, a streak of silver has already crossed the sky. Then Lu Chen's entire figure seemed to be pulled by a line extending from the sky, and then followed the streak of silver and broke through the air. A moment later, with a bang, Lu Chen had arrived in front of the thatched cottage. Call. After taking a deep breath and landing smoothly, Lu Chen looked at a silver thread in his hand that was between translucent and transparent, and his eyes flickered. Spider silk is different from Spider-Man, who needs to make a spider web launcher. Lu Chen could feel a special substance constantly being produced in his body, especially in his hands. After that, he could spray out silver threads like spider silk in an instant through the injection of veins. And according to some information in his mind, Lu Chen knew that this silver thread between transparent and translucent was not only extremely flexible, but also had terrible stickiness. While sorting out his thoughts in this way, Lu Chen also took a deep look at a piece of land on the hillside. It can be seen with the naked eye that a palm-sized silver spider web is deeply embedded here like a brand, and because of Lu Chen's first immature dragging, the whole piece of land is like cracks, with large areas of spider web-like cracks. What a terrifying power! With deep sigh, Lu Chen had already opened the door of the thatched cottage. Soon after, they arrived at the swimming pool hidden deep in the thatched house. Lu Chen grinned and jumped down. Bang tong, splashed all over the sky, and Lu Chen had already rushed into the deep end of the swimming pool. Not long after, he walked out of the pool and looked at the jade-like skin. Lu Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. It seems that the perfect serum not only brings me strength, but also brings the first transformation of my body. As he said this, Lu Chen turned his gaze to the panel deep in his mind. Life, Lu Chen. Race, human. Occupation, devil merchant. Lost everything, just a small path, only souls are what the devil merchant hunts. Points, 14, 10 points for selling a can, 1 point for a successful introduction. Attributes: Strength 101, Agility 120, Spirit 130, Constitution 102. Talent: Silver tongue. As a businessman, silver tongue is your nature. Ability: Shop thatched house. With the thatched house as the center, within a radius of 2 kilometers, the host's defense is invincible. Unexpectedly excellent. Looking at the 4 major attribute values all breaking the 100 mark, Lu Chen couldn't help but sigh at the excellence of the perfect serum. No, to be more precise, he sighed at the horror of the Marvel world. Because it is in such a world that one can take out any ability at will and make people become superhuman. Although it is a product of the system, its foundation is still Marvel. At most, it eliminates some side effects and strengthens some advantages in the serum. And now, after Lu Chen perfectly absorbed the power of the serum, he also became an existence no less than Spider-Man. Perhaps, the only thing worse than Spider-Man is actual combat experience. As for basic attributes, Lu Chen believes that he should be not far behind Spider-Man, or even better. Especially in terms of spirit, Lu Chen is born with a 10 lead. Now, even if he closes his eyes, Lu Chen still feels that this world is like daytime, even clearer than observing with his eyes. And this is spider sense, relying on the vibration of the air to feel the power of the world. However, because of Lu Chen's excellent spirit, he can project this sense into a 3-dimensional existence so that he can receive and understand information more easily. I'll see how my body changes in the evening. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for so long. Lu Chen smiled and whispered, then changed into a white casual outfit and slowly opened the door. You look good, kid. Thanos narrowed his eyes and looked at the black-haired young man who was approaching slowly not far away, and his mouth curled up slightly. Compared with before, the boy in front of him was a little more pleasing to the eye. His tall body and smooth and fair face. Looking closely, he is no longer ordinary as before. Now, he is bright in the crowd. Is it heroic? Thanos smiled and was satisfied. It is really good to meet someone to chat with on such a planet. And if he has a choice, Thanos hopes that this person can look more pleasing to the eye. As for his strength, it is better to be able to see it at a glance. Well, finally, I will introduce the mysterious card in your hand. As he said this, Lu Chen also took a look at the golden card inlaid with intricate patterns that Thanos was playing with. Very beautiful. This was the first impression. However, if you look closely, you can see a mysterious pattern on this golden card that looks like a pentagram. Recalling the information in his mind, Lu Chen also said bluntly, this is a summoning card that can summon unexpected existences. Unexpected, suspicious, Thanos also took a look at the card in his hand. Just this card can summon an existence that he didn't expect. At this time, as if seeing Thanos's doubts, Lu Chen smiled and added, you put it on the ground and then step back a few steps. Hearing Lu Chen's voice, Thanos nodded. Then, he put the golden card on the ground and stepped back a few steps. However, not long after Thanos retreated. With a loud bang, a golden light burst out in an instant. At the same time, a ray of golden light was constantly drawing along the ground. In just a moment, a pentagram array covering several square meters appeared on the ground. Tisk tisk, it's really beautiful. Liu Chen, who saw this picture for the first time, also exclaimed. This looks very much like the summoning circle in the magic world. However, I don't know what interesting things it can summon. At this moment, there was another boom, and the golden light suddenly gathered into a ball. Looking closely, there seemed to be a seed in the rich golden light. Yes, a seed. The seed was as big as a fist and looked very full. The seeds of the sacred tree, from the world of Naruto, the seeds of the ancestor of the god of creation, which is said to be able to swallow the sea, tear the earth, and move mountains, have a very small chance of cultivating the next generation of sacred trees. Feeling the information from the dark, Liu Chen also had a strange look on his face. The system really dared to give the seeds of the sacred tree. At this time, as if it had noticed Liu Chen's surprise, a cold voice also sounded in his ears. Although the seeds of the sacred tree are rare, it is extremely difficult to cultivate them successfully. It is not something that ordinary people can do. Well, I said why the system is so generous. With a sigh in his heart, Liu Chen also grinned and laughed. Congratulations, your plan is expected to succeed. Hearing this, Thanos frowned and asked in confusion, what do you mean? With a chuckle, Liu Chen pointed to the seeds floating not far away and exclaimed, this is the seed of the sacred tree. You learned the wood clone before, right? That kind of ninjutsu is just an ordinary ninjutsu of a world, and the illusion that changes everyone's memory that I mentioned before is just a more terrifying ninjutsu of that world. After listening to Liu Chen's explanation, Thanos' doubts became stronger and he asked, what does this have to do with this seed of the sacred tree? Quote. His face froze slightly, and Liu Chen almost forgot the point. He slapped his forehead and said quickly, it is because of the sacred tree that the ninja world was born. If you can plant the seeds of this sacred tree, it will not be difficult to create another ninja world. At that time, do you think you will not have everything you want? Really? With a hint of doubt, Thanos looked at Liu Chen suspiciously. Then, he took a step and walked towards the seed. When Thanos reached the pentagram array where the seeds of the sacred tree were suspended, his expression suddenly changed. A rich, extremely rich vitality had already filled the space. Looking closely, the land under the seeds was constantly sprouting green shoots. How could there be such a strong vitality? With a rare change of expression, Thanos had already reached out and grasped the seed. However, at this moment, bang, bang, bang. It was like the heartbeat of a life, but it sounded like thunder coming from the seed. What surprised Thanos even more was that he actually felt that this seed seemed to have bred a young life. It was ugly and weak, but it had a deep desire, as if it was looking forward to a new life. I see. With a sigh, as if he had realized something, Thanos' face showed a rare hint of joy. After a moment, Thanos turned around and left in Liu Chen's stunned eyes. Where are you going? After a long pause, Liu Chen shouted towards Thanos' back. Thank you, I see real hope. Laughing, the former king seemed to have returned to his original vigor and vitality. Hearing Thanos' voice, Liu Chen was also slightly startled, and subconsciously asked, what hope? Ha ha ha, all hope. As he said this, the purple figure took a big step and returned to the thatched hut. Not long after that, Thanos actually walked out of the thatched hut with a hoe on his shoulder and a straw hat on his head. It seemed that he saw Liu Chen still standing there in a daze, so Thanos raised his hand and urged. Don't bother me anymore. I'm busy planting trees. Planting trees. Liu Chen was stunned and stood there until he returned to the store. Did Thanos really become a farmer? He touched his face suspiciously and looked through the window at the setting sun. A purple figure wearing a straw hat and digging the land with a hoe in his hand was in the distance. Liu Chen was silent for a long time. System, why? I don't understand. Ding. Considering that the floating throne he gave was too valuable, this system condensed all the subsequent opportunities into a top-quality reward, exploding the sacred tree seeds, and this was also the reason why he no longer mentioned opening other jars. I'm asking, why did Thanos choose to plant trees like this? Ding. This system doesn't know, but by simulating Thanos' emotions, it can be inferred that this is the best choice for this person. Okay. Liu Chen sighed and was speechless. Thanos had always wanted to retire. If he could not pick up the gloves again, this guy would probably not be willing to pick them up. Moreover, if he could really cultivate the seeds into a sacred tree, the pie that Liu Chen drew for him might really become a reality. However, this is destined to be a long wait. After all, this sacred tree seed is different from the seed that took root in the ninja world. According to the information given by the system, if you want to plant a sacred tree in the Marvel Universe, the rejection of the world alone is not enough. This is a big problem. After all, the sacred tree is no different from other trees. After all, it is a great life form like the god of creation, and it has its own set of laws. At this time, if you look closely at Thanos, this strongest man in the Marvel Universe is sweating on his forehead. Obviously, this is no longer just planting trees. Resisting rejection, using power to open up the soil for the survival of the sacred tree, and even borrowing the power of wireless gloves to maintain a piece of space. It is better to say that it is a war without the smoke of gunpowder than planting trees. However, looking at Thanos' smiling face, Liu Chen could not say anything. Alas. With a sigh, Liu Chen slowly turned around. It's time to leave here. As he spoke, Liu Chen slowly walked towards the huge floating throne suspended above the store. Next time, I will not let your soul go. On another planet countless light years away from Thanos' back garden, in a corner of a very prosperous city, a shop appeared at some point. The shop is not big, but it looks very exquisite. However, compared with the surrounding high-rise buildings, this three-story shop with an antique style is out of place. In particular, the plaque of this shop is engraved with Devil's Shop, with flying dragons and phoenixes, which makes people stay away. The devil is a bit ominous after all. Moreover, now, half of the population of this planet, no, the entire universe has disappeared. No matter who it is, they have lost their relatives and even friends to a certain extent, so that the entire planet is shrouded in a sad atmosphere. In the current, sad, situation, how can you step into such an ominous shop? However, Liu Chen is sitting on the Daoyutai, leaning happily on a rocking chair. This is his 5th day on Earth. Thanos' floating throne has the coordinates of the Earth, and Liu Chen also has the help of the system. So, in just a few days, he moved his shop to this familiar city. As a businessman, he naturally moved to a prosperous place. Thanos' back garden was beautiful, but there was not even a human hair. Liu Chen was impatient. But what Liu Chen didn't know at that time was that when he sat on the floating throne and left, Thanos, who had been busy cultivating the land, suddenly raised his head and looked deeply in the direction where Liu Chen left. People like you shouldn't come to this world. With a helpless sigh, Thanos pressed his straw hat again and leaned down. Rather than worrying about the balance of the entire universe, what was more important to him at the moment was to plant trees and then complete his final, grand plan. If possible, he wanted to see his daughter again and say, sorry, to her. As for that young man, Thanos had tried, but couldn't stop him, and was powerless to stop him. He couldn't even break through that layer of invisible airflow, so how could he stop him? Perhaps compared to him, that young man was more likely to become Pandora's box, a symbol of disaster. In the rare bitterness, this purple figure also chose to rest for a while, found a stone and sat down slowly. Then, he quietly watched the sunset. At this moment, a cold voice suddenly sounded in Liu Chen's ears in the store. Host, I transformed the store into its current appearance according to your ideas, and even changed the name to Devil's Shop. If you don't start business, you know the consequences. Listening to the system's voice, Liu Chen waved his hand disapprovingly, then took a sip of the glass of juice next to him, and responded, believe me, no matter what, I am a qualified salesman. If I can't even sell things, it will be a joke. At this time, as if he noticed something, Liu Chen suddenly grinned and said with a smile, look, the customers are here, right? As soon as he finished speaking, a mysterious figure shrouded in a black robe, revealing only a pair of blue eyes, had already stepped into the store. She was Mo Li, an orphan. No, to be precise, she had just become an orphan not long ago. One day more than 100 days ago, she watched her biological parents turn into dust and dissipate bit by bit. Frightened, screaming, in disbelief, covering her mouth tightly. Molly's eyes were filled with tears. Later, according to the official, this is a tragedy, the whole world is like this, our hero lost. In the face of a real disaster, we humans are so fragile. Without listening to the rest of the words, Molly bit her lips tightly, and blood was flowing out. However, compared to the pain in her body, her heart was more painful. Heroes are really unreliable. With a miserable smile, her yearning for heroes, pursuit of Iron Man, and trust in Captain America all collapsed. Later, late at night, she put on a black robe and chose to pursue herself. She wanted to seek strength and then go find her parents in person. To this end, she did not hesitate to travel to every mysterious corner of the world. Because she firmly believed that there was always a mysterious place with what she needed. And now, she came to the 258th store. The name of this store is very interesting, called Devil's Shop. According to her investigation, this store seemed to have suddenly appeared in recent days. At the same time, a building here also disappeared. It was because of this strange phenomenon that she did not hesitate to cross several cities and rush here. Hello, this is the Devil's Shop, a shop that can make your dreams come true. For this new guest, Lu Chen skillfully launched a verbal offensive. However, with his current strength, he could already see the desire in the guest's eyes. I guess it worked. With a smile in his heart, Lu Chen was also grateful for the power brought by the mental breakthrough of 100. The mental attribute breaking through 100 means that his brain area has been truly developed. Now, his sight stayed on the eyes of this mysterious figure for 0.1 second, and his pupils were like pinhole cameras, engraving everything in the girl's eyes in his mind. Afterwards, he used the super strong operating ability of his mind to quickly infer the information contained in this pair of eyes. As the saying goes, the eyes are the windows of the soul. People who have not undergone special training have their eyes full of thoughts. And in the depths of the eyes of this person in front of him, Lu Chen saw desire, deep desire, and the anxiety and fear hidden in the deepest part. She was afraid. What was she afraid of? Lu Chen could not infer, but this was enough for Lu Chen. Whatever you want, I can provide it to you. I want. In the clear voice like an oriole, the girl in black robe hesitated to speak. Then, as if she noticed something, she looked at the handsome black-haired young man with caution. For some reason, when the young man spoke, she almost revealed her true feelings. If it weren't for the repression and pain in the past 100 days, which made her mind tense, she would have responded directly to the young man's words. Call. Exhaling deeply, the girl was a little nervous, and her hand could not help but reach for her waist. There was an item that could give her safety in an unfamiliar environment. But at this moment, the young man's mouth curled up. No lethal weapons are allowed in this store. With a hint of playfulness, Lu Chen's hand slightly extended, turning into an invisible afterimage. Before the girl felt a lightness on her waist, a silver pistol had already fallen into the young man's hand. It's a very good flintlock gun. After playing with the silver revolver in his hand for a while, Lu Chen placed it on the table beside him with a smile. This. The girl stared at him blankly, unable to speak. Can a person's hand speed really be that fast? As if she had thought of this, the girl did not bother to hide the panic of losing the pistol in her eyes, and then she turned her eyes from the silver pistol to Lu Chen and said seriously. You just said I can have whatever I want. Yes. Nodding, Lu Chen responded. Okay, please, can you give me the same power as you? Of course I can. Lu Chen raised a finger. 100,000 US dollars. Well, after hearing Lu Chen's reply, the girl's face froze slightly. It wasn't that 100,000 US dollars was too much, but the shopkeeper answered so quickly that she was a little suspicious whether it was true. At this time, looking at the stunned girl, Lu Chen thought the number was too high, and immediately opened his mouth to test. In fact, items worth 100,000 US dollars can also be. No, I just feel it's a bit sudden. Waving her hand, the girl took out a card from her bag and asked, Can I pay by card? Of course you can. Nodding, Lu Chen raised his footsteps and walked towards a place not far away that looked like a bar counter. Not long after, in front of the girl's stunned eyes, Lu Chen had already come to her with a jar in his arms. Smash it, and you'll get everything you want. What? The girl blinked and her voice was full of disbelief. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it, you can smash it first, and I will collect the money later. If you are not satisfied, I don't want the money. Lu Chen, who had been mentally prepared, returned to his seat leisurely and drank juice. Looking at the black jar in front of her, the girl hesitated for the first time. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that it was a trick to coax a child. Smashing the jar, you big head ghost. However, looking at the shopkeeper who was calm and composed in the distance, and thinking of what he had just said, the girl couldn't help but hold a glimmer of hope. How about giving it a try? Maybe there is really a chance. Of course, the reason for this is that the girl doesn't care much about money. Even if she was cheated out of $100,000, she would accept it. After all, she was born in a wealthy family. If her parents hadn't left suddenly, she would really be a little princess at this moment. And now, such an opportunity is in front of her. Although it is a bit slim, compared with the mysterious shops or weird places she encountered before, this one is very sincere. Even let the customers check the goods first to see if they are satisfied, and then collect the money. But at this time, what Mo Li didn't know was that if she smashed the jar, couldn't pay or didn't pay, Lu Chen's first soul would be in her hands. Compared with the value of the soul, the mere money is insignificant. I smash it, hoping it won't let me down. After hesitating for a long time, the girl finally made up her mind. However, looking at the jar in front of her, which was ancient in color and looked very thick, the girl's mouth twitched slightly, and she complained rarely, "Should I just smash it like this?" Of course, if you don't smash it directly, how else can you smash it? After a pause, Lu Chen asked back. I met a steely straight man. Mo Li complained slightly in her heart, but she was helpless. Although she was shrouded in a black robe, you can see from her slender figure and her pleasant voice that she is a delicate girl. It's really unbelievable for a girl to smash a pottery jar with her bare hands. Shaking her head helplessly, the girl squatted down and slowly picked up the pottery jar. It was a little heavy, heavier than expected. While staggering, the girl had already held the pottery jar to her chest. Then, she closed her eyes and smashed it hard to the ground. A crisp sound of crack echoed in the air, but there was no sound of fragments flying around as the girl imagined. On the contrary, there seemed to be a ray of light. Even with her eyes closed, the girl could feel it. Ice bloodline. The terrible bloodline of a frost witch from the Valoran world. The dark ice power bred by this bloodline can not only freeze everything, but also pierce and crush anyone who resists. Hungry Wolf Cookies. A strange cookie made by the world's greatest inventor, Big Big Wolf. No matter what kind of creature eats it, it will be stimulated to become a wolf. The Queen's New Clothes. According to legend, it is the clothes of the most beautiful queen in an ancient kingdom, but only truly smart people can see it. Staring blankly at the three strange things floating in the air, a bottle of blue potion, a box of biscuits, and a very beautiful thing that looked like a white wedding dress, Lu Chen's mouth twitched. I didn't expect that he was actually a smart person. No, that's wrong. He was a smart person, so it was not surprising that he could see this, Queen's New Clothes. Moreover, according to his spiritual attribute reaching a breakthrough of 100, it can be said that it is related to intelligence. However, according to his speculation, props like this, spiritual attributes, if we break through 15, we will probably be able to see it. At this moment, a cry of surprise suddenly sounded in the air. Are these real? Covering her mouth, looking at the treasure floating in the air, emitting golden light, Molly couldn't help but scream. After searching for so long, she finally saw hope. Floating in the air like this, it was obviously an extraordinary treasure. How could this ordinary girl who was searching for extraordinary power not be ecstatic? This is of course true, and you are very lucky. As he said this, Lu Chen stood up from his seat and first came to the front of the ice bloodline. Such a girl who is obviously pursuing power must like this the most. With a smile, Lu Chen took the initiative to introduce, this is the bloodline of a witch. She is good at the power of ice and is eager to make the whole world fall into a bone-chilling ice age. It is conceivable that this witch is so powerful. What do you mean? Molly, who was wrapped in a black robe, was slightly shocked. Yes, drink it, and you will have ice blood, and have the hope of becoming the next generation of frost witches. As he spoke, Lu Chen handed the bottle of blue potion to the girl. Staring blankly at the blue potion in front of her, the girl's eyes couldn't stop flashing. Power, this is the power she longs for. If the shop owner didn't lie to her, she could really have power. Thinking of this, Molly couldn't help but look at the bottle of blue potion carefully. It was crystal clear, but it was glowing with the light of blue ice. In the distance, you can see cold air coming out of the test tube. Yes, cold air. The extremely cold air slowly spread out. The cold temperature she had never experienced before suddenly hit her, causing her body to tremble and goosebumps to appear. However, it was precisely because of this that the girl's eyes became more and more fiery. After a moment, she stretched out her hand to take the test tube handed over by Lu Chen, and her face suddenly changed. She looked up and found that her right hand had been frozen without her knowing when, with a little ice stain on it. The extreme coldness spread along her arm, as if it was going to swallow her whole body. Don't hesitate. Hearing Lu Chen's reminder, the girl's eyes trembled, but a hint of determination flashed across her eyes. Then the girl lifted the brim of her black hat, raised her frozen arms suddenly, and drank the liquid in the test tube in one gulp. At this time, Lu Chen unexpectedly discovered that his first guest in New York was actually a great beauty. The girl took off her hat, revealing her light yellow hair that was thinner and softer than silk. It shone like gold in the sunlight coming through the window. Her nose was straight, her lips were thick and firm, and her eyes were bright like amber. A very standard Western beauty was already vividly portrayed on the paper. However, what was surprising at this moment was that the expression of the girl who drank the test tube slowly solidified, as if she was frozen. What was even more surprising was that there was a buzzing sound under her feet. Looking in the direction of the sound, Lu Chen was shocked to find that the deep blue ice with a hint of black ominous aura had been spreading continuously. In the blink of an eye, it had spread to the entire store. As for the girl, when Lu Chen looked again, he was shocked to find that the girl had been frozen in the ice like a sculpture, turning into an ice sculpture. This is the Frost Witch's ultimate move, the frozen tomb, right? Lu Chen guessed, stroking his chin. Frozen tomb. Use dark ice to wrap people, and the ice will flash cold light to strangle the enemy, and protect oneself and be immune to any harm. However, Lu Chen did not expect that this trick could also be used for inheritance. Yes, inheritance. According to the information given by the system, this guest will absorb the real ice blood in the ice. As for how much she can absorb, it depends on her talent. However, what puzzled Lu Chen was that he would not personally create a Marvel's Frost Witch. You know, the Frost Witch is not an existence that is easy to mess with. A desire to turn the whole world into an ice age. Such an existence is not ordinary. Now, the Avengers of this planet are in the midst of a storm. If a terrible Frost Witch emerges, it is estimated that those Avengers will be scalped. As for why this girl will not become a hero like the Avengers, that is naturally because Lu Chen saw deep ambition in the eyes of this girl. Moreover, can you expect a guest who opens a hungry wolf biscuit to guide people to awaken their wolf nature to be a so-called hero? And this is also the most terrifying part of the jar. Snap. After an unknown amount of time, the deathly silence was finally broken by a crisp sound. Looking up, the girl Mo Li, who was shrouded in ice and turned into an ice sculpture, had her eyelids trembling slightly. Along with it, there were fine cracks one after another. As the cracks spread across the entire ice sculpture. I am of the ice bloodline. A cold and quiet voice sounded slowly, and a young girl slowly opened her eyes. I believe you have achieved your wish. Before anyone broke through the ice, Lu Chen had already spoken. Yes, thank you sincerely. Accompanied by this voice, with a boom, the ice sculpture exploded and turned into ice crystals all over the sky. However, surprisingly, the ice crystals only flew 2 meters away from the girl and solidified in the air. Then, the ice crystals rotated and slowly shrank, finally revealing a cold and beautiful girl with long ice blue hair. Yes, long ice blue hair. She lost her golden blonde hair and replaced it with long ice blue hair. At this time, looking at this girl, Lu Chen was also slightly startled. He didn't expect that this girl who absorbed the ice bloodline would change her appearance a bit. Moreover, her appearance now is very similar to a person Lu Chen is familiar with. Kula Diamendo, the ice girl in the King of Fighters. She also has long ice blue hair and a cold and beautiful appearance. But compared to Kula Diamendo, the girl at this moment is a little immature. I have to say, this is an amazing power. She raised her hand slightly, and a wisp of ice crystal bloomed in her palm. Then, the girl pushed forward. Ice fragments. According to the inherited memory in her mind, the girl called out softly. Shua, accompanied by a sound of breaking through the air, a half-meter-long spear made of ice shot straight out. With a bang, the ice spear had already sunk halfway into the wall. However, this was not the end. As if to show off, the girl snapped her fingers. Boom! With a roar, the ice spear that had sunk into the wall shattered in an instant, and a chill gushed out. When she looked at the wall again, she saw that the 2 square meters of the wall in the store had been completely filled with ice. Looking at this shocking scene, a hint of joy flashed in the depths of the girl's eyes. Sure enough, she really became an extraordinary person. No, to be precise, she became a witch, a frost witch. But before the girl could be more happy, a voice that was neither salty nor bland sounded in the air. If you damage the property in the store, please pay $100,000. Quote. Her face froze slightly, but the girl didn't say much. Compared to the money, the joy of gaining power for the first time was obviously making her overjoyed. I'll give them to you later. Oh, I have 2 more things. Nodding, Lu Chen handed the already packed Hungry Wolf biscuits and the queen's new clothes to the girl and said, "This cookie has a strange magical power. Anyone who eats it will awaken their wolf nature." Wolf nature. The girl frowned, obviously not understanding. The 4 characteristics of the wolf clan are wildness, cruelty, greed, and tyranny. In short, they are wolf nature. The girl was a little confused by the seemingly plausible explanation. However, she felt that this seemed to be a good thing. What about this white wedding dress? Does it have any magic power? After putting away a box of Hungry Wolf cookies, Molly picked up the wedding dress and asked curiously. Compared to the cookies, she was more interested in this white wedding dress. After all, she was only 19 years old and in her prime. She had little resistance to beautiful things. Cough. Lu Chen coughed lightly, and felt a little embarrassed when he looked at the queen's new dress. For some reason, he was looking forward to the girl wearing it. Of course, she would wear it in front of him, and then he would act like a fool. This is the queen's new dress. It is said that only wise people can see it. Only smart people can see it. After a pause, the girl couldn't help but look at the clothes in her hand. If that was true, then wouldn't stupid people be able to see it? In other words, wearing this, in the eyes of some people, wouldn't it be the same as not wearing it? Thinking of this, Molly frowned. Immediately, she put the clothes into her bag decisively. After doing this, the girl looked up at Lu Chen, who was lying on a chair not far away and drinking juice leisurely, and asked, "Boss, can I open another jar?" Having seen the benefits of the jar, Molly naturally couldn't resist the temptation. 1 jar could give her power. If she opened more jars, then. However, before the girl could think of a picture, Lu Chen's voice had already shattered her expectations. "Of course, but this time it will cost $1 million." Looking at the girl's stiff face, Lu Chen continued to explain. "The shop's rule is that when one person opens a can, the price must be 10 times higher than the last time, or even more." Quote. Molly was silent for a rare moment, and a hint of helplessness appeared on her face. 100,000, or even 200,000, was not difficult for her. But 1 million was not a small sum for her. After all, her parents were no longer with her, and the family had no income. Unless she took back her father's company. Thinking of this, a strange light flashed in the depths of Molly's eyes. After half a day, Lu Chen was in a good mood after seeing off the first customer from New York. Firstly, it was because he had gained 13 points, 10 points for selling a can and 3 points for introducing 3 times. Secondly, the net was cast. Yes, the net was cast. The girl, the ice girl who called herself Molly, before leaving and kept saying, "I will definitely come again next time," was not a quiet person at first glance. With such a girl promoting, Lu Chen will not worry about not having customers. And it is worth mentioning here that as a demon businessman, simply selling cans is not his style. Selling cans is just a form. His real purpose is only one, that is, harvesting souls. But this soul is very particular. The souls of ordinary people are dispensable to him. The soul he really needs is only a very pure and powerful soul. Powerful, of course, is powerful in terms of strength, and pure is a measure. Like Thanos, who is dedicated to the balance of the universe and spares no cost, is an extremely pure soul. According to the system, if he can harvest such a soul, he will receive a reward. Therefore, as a businessman, Lu Chen had to shoulder another task, that is training. He would use the resources in the jar to train them into strong men. As for the purity of the soul, Lu Chen had no idea at the moment. Take your time, anyway, the last thing you lack is time. What Lu Chen didn't know at this moment was that his first guest, Mo Li, was more than just a restless person. Sizzle sounded like a brocade being torn apart, and a bloody wound appeared on the neck of an old man who was over 50 years old. Molly, you're crazy. Do you know what you are doing? Someone, come quickly. Screams, exclamations. In this instant of noise, the company executives sitting in the conference room looked at the cold-looking girl not far away in disbelief. Molly, the little princess of this company. Yes, once. Since her parents left, the legal person of the entire company has been directly changed under the tacit agreement of several people. And all this was done without anyone noticing. As for Molly, a ridiculous girl, reminiscing about the past and chasing after mysteries all day long. For such a guy, it is enough for them to give her some tips every month and take care of her food, clothing, housing and transportation. But all this changed today. The girl returned to the company calmly and asked for a board meeting. Considering their reputation, the old men gave her a chance. However, tacitly, no one in the company's senior management looked at her. Especially when they heard that the girl was asking for the return of her father's inheritance, most people looked impatient, and even a hint of coldness flashed in their eyes. The cake has been divided, who is willing to spit it out? And in such silence, almost all the senior management watched coldly, until a secretary took out a document. Dear Ms. Molly, your father's tenure caused the company to suffer large losses. We have already. It was a very long document, but it was nothing more than making up stories about her father, and then using the name of legality, and all of this just ended. Molly, the former little princess of the company, took out a box of cookies and ate a piece. As she chewed slowly, she seemed to have changed into a different person, becoming even colder. The people sitting next to her couldn't help but shudder. Then, with a click, the glass in front of Molly shattered in an instant. Under the incredulous gazes of the senior executives, the girl pinched a piece of glass between her fingers and instantly wiped the throat of the secretary who had been reading the document. I can give up the inheritance, but you shouldn't deliberately trample on my father. The cold voice made the temperature of the entire conference room drop a few degrees. But at this moment, trample, trample, trample. Quick and dense footsteps suddenly sounded outside the conference room door. Boom. The door was suddenly pushed open, and a group of fully armed security guards rushed in. Looking at these security guards, many senior executives breathed a sigh of relief. God knows how a girl could have such great oppression. But it's all over. Murder is a capital crime. Although this is an insignificant secretary, it is enough to send this last unstable factor to prison until death comes. Thinking of this, an old man who looks quite prestigious snorted. Catch her and send her to jail, and I don't want to see her out again. Yes. In response, dozens of security guards slowly approached the girl. As for the more senior executives, they sighed slightly with a touch of pity. It is said that impulse is the devil. This time, you have played yourself to death. But at this time, no one noticed that the corner of the girl's mouth raised a cold arc. Bill's company executives were slaughtered in blood. Among the debris on the ground, there was only one living person who was huddled in a corner with fear, his body trembling uncontrollably. According to the evidence at the scene, this may be another extraordinary case. Some people say that this is a sign of the revival of Hydra, while others say that this is another experiment that should not have been conducted by a certain mysterious group. Watching the news report on TV quietly, Lu Chen narrowed his eyes slightly. In just a flash of the picture, Lu Chen had already seen traces of frost. If there were no accidents, it should be the masterpiece of her first customer. Thinking of this, Lu Chen looked at the system mall, and the extra hungry wolf cookies that required 10 points to exchange, and shook his head helplessly. It was probably because of it. Although the girl was not a peaceful person at first glance, she was not such a butcher. At least, more than 10 years of education would make it difficult for her to kill. But with the hungry wolf cookies, it was different. Fusion of cold, she has ice blood and her life level has already transformed. It is very likely that she will completely ignore life because of the hungry wolf biscuits. The reason is of course very simple. Compared with ordinary people, she is a strong person. As a strong person, will she tolerate provocations from the weak? Maybe, maybe not, it depends on the person. But after eating the hungry wolf biscuits and awakening her wolf nature, she is not a good person. She will kill decisively for the provocation of the weak, and it is no joke. In this case, a massacre is also imaginable. Shaking his head and letting go of the thoughts in his mind, Lu Chen was also a little expectant. Presumably, the next guest is not far away. At this moment, at a street intersection outside the Devil's Shop, a burly, handsome man with thick eyebrows and big eyes looked at a small shop located between two tall buildings and frowned. It should be here. Steve also took a step forward. Yes, that's right, Steve, the legendary Captain America, a man with strong cohesion and appeal. Now, he is a member of the Avengers. It's just a pity that because of Thanos' snap of his fingers, the whole world has lost half of its population. In such an extreme situation, countless living people have pointed their fingers at heroic organizations like the Avengers. Because of their failure, their loved ones died. Because of their failure, the world was almost paralyzed. And as the most well-known Captain America in the Avengers, he has to bear countless strange eyes. For this reason, he had to wear a baseball cap to investigate the tragedy in the morning in a low-key manner. It is worth mentioning that he should not have come here. Unfortunately, too many heroes died in the battle with Thanos, and most of the survivors disappeared because of self-blame. Today, there are less than 10 people who are really active in the Avengers. And today, it was him who was on duty. Step, step, step. Heavy footsteps sounded at the door. Captain America adjusted his baseball cap and took a rare look at this somewhat eerie, Devil's Shop. According to investigations, the girl with the power of frost walked out of this shop yesterday, and her temperament changed drastically. Of course, this is just a guess, and maybe that is the girl's nature. However, in the spirit of believing it is better to believe it than not to believe it, Captain America still came. It was only until this moment, looking at this shop, that the stone in his heart that was slightly relieved was raised again. There is a problem, and a big problem. Eerie and a little dim, the faint light shone in through the window and fell on the pottery jars on the counter. The whole shop gives people an ominous feeling at first glance. What's more, when he looked to the side, Captain America saw some strange marks on the wall not far away. And these marks are exactly the same as the marks on the wall of Bill's company office. Welcome. A warm call interrupted Captain America's thoughts. Looking up, a young man in casual clothes was walking slowly towards him. At this time, as if noticing Captain America's gaze, the young man waved his hand. Boom! Accompanied by an invisible force, the wall with traces on it slowly recovered. It recovered very slowly, as if to allow Captain America to see more carefully. Before he could finish his words, Captain America was puzzled to see the young man walking over with a pottery jar in his hand. Don't ask too much, I won't answer. Then, Lu Chen pointed to the pottery jar on the ground in front of Captain America and said with a mysterious smile, the answer is in the jar, smash it and you will know everything. Crack! Captain America's fist tightened slightly, and his brows subconsciously frowned. This kind of blatant threat and provocation was not the first time he encountered it. His number one enemy, Hydra, was also like this. It was always like that, even if it was discovered, it was fearless. You reminded me of something bad, Captain America said coldly, pressing down his cap again. Really? Lu Chen smiled, but didn't take it seriously. He could abuse and threaten Thanos, not to mention Captain America, who had a strong sense of justice. It's just that for someone like Captain America, conventional sales pitches are not easy to use. Moreover, the more you sell, the more suspicious he may become. Instead of doing that, it's better to be open and follow his ideas. I'll tell you clearly that the ice girl is related to me. If you want to know, just smash the jar for me. The words have been made clear, it's that simple. As for whether Captain America will take action, Lu Chen doesn't care. Being born with the same serum, Lu Chen believes that he can teach Captain America how to behave. Moreover, this is his shop, his territory. As long as he is here, he is not afraid of the Emperor of the Universe. Staring at the can at his feet, Captain America fell into deep thought. A strange Chinese youth, a strange devil shop, and this strange can in front of him. It must be said that Captain America's heart is full of doubts at this moment. However, one thing is certain, this shop owner has a mysterious connection with the missing ice girl in the morning. There is no evidence, but Captain America is convinced in his heart. Exhaling deeply, Captain America glanced at Lu Chen and said solemnly, I hope that after I smash the jar, you can fulfill your promise. That's for sure. With a smile, Lu Chen added, customers are God to me. If possible, I am willing to provide every customer with the most satisfactory service. With a raised eyebrow, Captain America calmly restrained the complexity on his face. If the customer is really God, you wouldn't be like this. Thinking of this, Captain America's right hand slowly raised. Crack, accompanied by a clenched fist, and the fist made a crisp bone sound. Then, with a bang, the pottery jar on the ground exploded in an instant. At the same time, as Captain America's pupils shrank, three things shrouded in golden light came into view. A strange hammer with red and blue intersections, a toy doll with long golden flying hair, and the last one was a few green broad beans. Congratulations. Amidst the continuous congratulations, Captain America frowned slightly as he looked at the black-haired young man who was slowly approaching. Obviously, he had no good feelings towards the mysterious Lu Chen. However, this was not the time to care about this. Looking at the three objects suspended in the air, he also asked a rare question. What are these? And you said tell me everything. That's all. Lu Chen smiled calmly as he spread his hands. Then, without waiting for Captain America to respond, he spoke again, I am a businessman, and these pottery jars are all my products. As he spoke, Lu Chen picked up the hammer floating in the air, waited for a while, and continued to add. There are all kinds of magical items in these jars, and the girl you want to ask is one of my guests. So, she has acquired extraordinary abilities. After hearing Lu Chen's voice, Captain America's pupils shrank to the point of a needle, and he was stunned. Yes, she has gained extraordinary power. Nodding, Lu Chen said nothing more to the first guest. For a businessman, it is also a big principle to protect the privacy of the guests. At this time, as if he thought of something, Lu Chen also reminded. These three things belong to you. Belong to me. After a pause, Captain America also noticed Lu Chen's intention to change the subject, and continued. Yes, he smiled, picked up the strangely colored hammer in his hand, and introduced it directly. This is the opposite hammer, a very interesting prop. As long as you are hit lightly by this hammer, not only your personality, but also your habits will be opposite. Really? After taking a look at the hammer in Lu Chen's hand, Captain America showed a rare look of doubt. Do you want to try it? Seeing this, Lu Chen naturally did not hesitate to invite. Well, his face froze slightly, but Captain America did not respond. After all, the expression on the shopkeeper's face was so playful that Captain America had a bad feeling in his heart. At this moment, Lu Chen, who noticed Captain America's alertness, sighed slightly. It's a pity to lose such a good opportunity. He originally wanted to see what the blackened Captain America looked like. But who told the captain to be too alert? Thinking of this, Lu Chen threw the reverse hammer in his hand to Captain America and warned him, this hammer can only be used twice a day, and the duration varies from person to person. Give it to me. Looking at the hammer in his hand, Captain America looked confused. Shaking his head, Lu Chen smiled playfully. It's not for you, it's for you. Lu Chen pointed to a notice board in the store and said, it clearly says there's a jar on it, $100,000, remember to transfer the money when you leave. 100,000. After hearing the price quoted by Lu Chen, Captain America's mouth twitched fiercely. However, after a moment, as if he had thought of something, Captain America did not question it. After all, If it was true that the mysterious shop owner said that he could obtain extraordinary power, $100,000 would be considered cheap. At this moment, Liu Chen's voice sounded in Captain America's ears again. This is a summoning doll, which can summon a strong man from another world for 3 minutes. After introducing this, Liu Chen also muttered in his heart. Captain America's luck is really amazing, and he only smashes some practical things. Liu Chen is not unfamiliar with the blonde doll in his hand. All Might, a world hero, has supported the peace of the entire era. In terms of personal charm, he is not inferior to Captain America in front of him. More importantly, compared to Captain America, All Might is a terrible strong man. Even if he is seriously injured, the pure wind of a punch he throws can sweep across a street. It is conceivable how terrible this guy is. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.